The cafe was packed when Sarah walked in, her left hand prominently displayed so everyone could see the ring. My grandmother's ring. She slid into the seat across from me, a smirk playing on her perfectly painted lips. "Thanks for meeting me, Emma," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I wanted you to be the first to know. Michael and I are getting married." My stomach churned at the mention of my ex-husband's name, but I kept my expression neutral. Sarah had always been like this, taking everything that was mine, from childhood toys to prom dates. But this time she'd gone too far. "Congratulations," I said, wrapping my hands around my coffee cup to stop them from shaking. "I see you're wearing Grandmother Rose's ring." She held up her hand, letting the antique diamond catch the light. "Oh, this old thing. Well, since Michael helped me contest the will, technically it's mine now, along with the house and the trust fund." Her smile widened. "It's funny how things work out, isn't it?" I thought about the last conversation I'd had with Grandmother Rose, just days before she passed. We'd been in her study, surrounded by her beloved books and antiques, when she'd handed me an old leather journal. "Keep this safe," she'd whispered, her voice weak but urgent. "Everything you need to know is in here. Promise me to wait until the right moment." I promised, tucking the journal away without reading it. Now, watching Sarah flaunt her stolen inheritance, I wondered if this was the moment Grandmother had been waiting for. "You know what's really funny?" Sarah continued, stirring her latte with obvious pleasure. "How easy it was to convince the lawyers that you were mentally unstable. A few tearful statements from Michael about your episodes during your marriage, some carefully edited photos." She shrugged. "The judge practically handed everything over." My hands tightened around my cup. The episodes Sarah mentioned were panic attacks I had after discovering Michael's affairs, including, I now realized, with my own sister. They'd used my lowest moments against me, twisted my pain into a weapon. "Why did you ask me here, Sarah?" I kept my voice steady, remembering the weight of Grandmother's journal in my bag. "Just to gloat." "Oh no, dear sister." She leaned forward, dropping her voice. "I wanted to offer you a deal. Sign away any future claims to the estate, and I'll give you a small monthly allowance, just enough to keep you from ending up on the streets." She sat back, clearly pleased with herself. After all, we are family. I thought about the journal, about Grandmother's final words, about the secret I discovered last night when I finally opened those weathered pages. "You're right," I said, reaching for my bag. "We are family. And there's something you should know about Grandmother's real estate." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "We've been through all the paperwork. Everything's in my name now." I pulled out the journal, its leather cover worn with age. "Not everything. Did you know Grandmother kept a second set of books?" For the first time, Sarah's confident smile faltered. "What?" "She was quite meticulous," I continued, opening the journal. "Every transaction, every property, every investment, all documented here, including some interesting transfers made just before she died." "You're lying," Sarah snapped, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "The lawyers found everything." "Did they?" I slid a stack of papers across the table, copies I'd made from the journal's most important pages. Because according to this, Grandmother's most valuable assets were moved into a separate trust 2 weeks before she passed. A trust that requires both sisters to agree on any distribution of funds. Sarah's face paled as she scanned the documents. I could almost see her mind racing, calculating what this meant. "That's impossible," she whispered, but her hands were shaking now. "Michael checked everything," he said. "Michael doesn't know about this," I cut in. "Neither do the lawyers. Grandmother made sure of that. She knew how you both operated. She was just waiting to see how far you'd go." "You're bluffing," Sarah said, but her voice had lost its edge. "These could be forged." I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd memorized. "Why don't we ask Mr. Chen? He's the trustee Grandmother appointed. I'm sure he'd be happy to verify everything." Sarah's composure cracked completely. "Wait," he said quickly, reaching for my phone. Let's discuss this." I ended the call before it connected, enjoying the flash of realization in her eyes. "Oh, now you want to talk? What happened to all that confidence from earlier?" "Emma, please," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You don't understand. Michael and we've already spent some of the money. We've made commitments." "I understand perfectly," I replied, gathering my things. "You and my ex-husband conspired to steal my inheritance by painting me as mentally unstable. You used my trust against me just like you always have. What do you want? Sarah asked, the question coming out more like a plea than a demand. I stood up, looking down at my sister, really looking at her for the first time in years. Behind the perfect makeup and designer clothes, I saw something I'd never noticed before. Fear. What I want, I said quietly, is for you to think about what's going to happen when Michael finds out there's no money left to steal. When he realizes that marrying you won't give him access to grandmother's fortune after all. The color drained from Sarah's face. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? I smiled, remembering all the times she'd taken what was mine, all the times she'd hurt me without consequence. I think it's time for both of you to learn what it feels like to lose everything. I turned to leave, but Sarah's voice stopped me. He'll leave me, she said, her words barely audible. If he finds out about this, he'll leave me. Probably, I agreed, not turning around. Just like he left me when he thought something better came along. Funny how history repeats itself, isn't it? As I walked out of the cafe, I could feel Sarah's eyes on me, could almost hear her mind racing to find a way out of the trap she'd set for herself. But this time, there was no escape. This time, justice would finally be served. The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls and dozens of text messages from both Sarah and Michael. I ignored them all, instead focusing on the next phase of my plan. Grandmother's journal had revealed more than just the secret trust. It had shown me exactly how to dismantle the lies they'd built. I drove to the law offices of Chen and Associates, the leather journal secure in my bag. Mr. Chen, a small man with kind eyes and steel gray hair, was waiting for me. Miss Emma, he said, rising from behind his desk. Your grandmother spoke of you often. She would be proud to see you now. I placed the journal on his desk. Did she tell you what they might try to do? He nodded gravely. Rose was very perceptive. She knew your sister's nature, and she had concerns about your ex-husband's intentions even before your divorce. That's why she created the second trust? Precisely. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. Everything of real value, the investment portfolios, the commercial properties, the art collection, it's all here, protected. What your sister and Michael managed to steal through the courts was essentially a shell. I thought about Sarah's smug face at the cafe, about Michael's confident testimony painting me as unstable. They don't know they've been playing with an empty hand this whole time. No, Mr. Chen confirmed, a slight smile touching his lips. And now that they've shown their true colors, we can proceed with the rest of Rose's plan. My phone buzzed again. Michael this time. I silenced it without looking at the message. How long before they figure it out? The quarterly statements go out next week. Once they try to access the accounts. Mr. Chen spread his hands. Well, let's just say it will be an enlightening experience. I spent the next few days in careful preparation. While Sarah and Michael grew increasingly desperate in their attempts to contact me, I met with bankers, real estate agents, and investment advisors. Each meeting revealed another layer of grandmother's brilliance. She hadn't just protected her assets, she created a framework for exposing every lie, every manipulation Sarah and Michael had used against me. The evidence was all there, meticulously documented. On Friday afternoon, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Emma, it was Michael's mother, Margaret. Please, we need to talk. Sarah's hysterical, and Michael won't tell me what's going on. I closed my eyes, remembering how Margaret had testified against me during the estate hearing, claiming she'd always known there was something wrong with that girl. I'm sorry, Margaret, I said, not feeling sorry at all. But I think it's best if they explain the situation to you themselves. I'm sure they can tell you all about how they conspired to steal my inheritance. But the money, she started. What about it? They already spent quite a bit, she said, her voice tight with worry. The new house, the cars, the engagement party next week. Emma, surely we can work something out. I thought about the engagement party they planned at the country club, the same club where Michael and I had gotten married 6 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. You know what's interesting, Margaret? When Michael and I were married, you told me family was everything. That loyalty and honesty were the foundations of a lasting relationship. I paused, letting the words sink in. I wonder what you'll say when you find out how your son and my sister betrayed those values. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. What do you mean? She finally asked. Ask them about the photos they doctored. Ask about the false testimony, the manufactured evidence they used to paint me as unstable. Better yet, ask them about the affair they were having while Michael and I were still married. I heard her sharp intake of breath. No, she whispered. They wouldn't. They did, I said simply. And now they're about to learn that actions have consequences. After hanging up, I drove to grandmother's house. My house now, though Sarah didn't know that yet. The Grand Victorian stood silent and dignified, its windows reflecting the late afternoon sun. I used my key to enter, breathing in the familiar scent of old books and furniture polish. In the study, everything was exactly as grandmother had left it. Her reading glasses still sat on the desk, next to a half-finished crossword puzzle. I ran my fingers along the spines of her beloved books, remembering all the hours we'd spent here together. I miss you, I whispered to the empty room. I wish you could see this. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mr. Chen. Quarterly statements sent. Expect contact within 24 hours. I smiled, settling into grandmother's favorite armchair. The wait wouldn't be long now. Just then, I heard a car screech to a halt outside. Footsteps pounded up the front steps, followed by the sound of someone pounding on the door. Emma, Sarah's voice, shrill with panic. Open this door right now. We need to talk. I stayed where I was, listening as Michael's voice joined hers. The accounts are empty, he was saying. Everything's gone. How could this happen? Nothing's gone. I called through the door, loud enough for them to hear. It was never there to begin with. The pounding stopped. A moment of silence, then Sarah's voice again, quieter now. What are you talking about? Maybe you should ask your fiancé about due diligence, I replied. About checking the real value of what you thought you were stealing before spending money you didn't have. Another silence, followed by the sound of hurried whispers. I could imagine them out there, their perfect world crumbling around them. Emma, please, Michael's voice now, using that gentle tone he'd always used when trying to manipulate me. Let's discuss this like adults. I'm sure we can work something out. I stood up, walking to the front door, but not opening it. Like we discussed things when you were sleeping with my sister. Or like we discussed things when you lied in court about my mental health. That was a mistake, he stammered. We never meant. To get caught? I finished for him. To face consequences? Well, too bad, because that's exactly what's about to happen. The fallout was swift and devastating. Within hours of their discovery that the accounts were empty, Sarah and Michael's carefully constructed world began to unravel. I sat in grandmother's study, watching through the window as they argued on the front lawn. Sarah was gesturing wildly, her perfect makeup streaked with tears, while Michael paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair in frustration. My phone lit up with a message from Mr. Chen. The bank is requesting an immediate meeting regarding the recent expenditures. Shall I arrange it? Yes, I replied, and make sure all relevant parties are present. The next morning, I walked into the downtown branch of First National Bank, dressed in one of grandmother's vintage Channel suits. Sarah and Michael were already there, along with their lawyer and Margaret. They all looked up when I entered, their faces a mix of anger, fear, and desperation. Now that everyone's here, the bank manager began. We need to discuss the irregular activities on these accounts. Sarah's lawyer leaned forward. My clients were granted access to these accounts through a court order. Everything was legal. The court order, I interrupted, placing grandmother's journal on the table, was obtained through fraudulent evidence that we can now prove was manipulated. The next hour was excruciating for them. Mr. Chen methodically laid out every detail, the doctored photos, the false testimonies, the carefully orchestrated character assassination they'd used to gain control of what they thought was grandmother's fortune. The real estate alone, Mr. Chen concluded, the properties they've leveraged for loans. None of it was actually in the accounts they accessed. Those assets are held in a separate trust, one that requires both sisters' consent for any transactions. Michael's face had turned an interesting shade of gray, but the money we spent was essentially credit extended by the bank based on assets you didn't actually control, the bank manager finished, which means those loans are now in default. Sarah's perfectly manicured nails dug into the conference table. This is ridiculous. Emma's just trying to hurt us because she's jealous. Michael chose me and she can't handle it. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the designer clothes and expensive jewelry, I saw what grandmother must have seen. A desperate woman so focused on taking what others have that she never built anything of her own. No, Sarah, I said quietly. This isn't about jealousy, it's about justice. About consequences. Grandmother knew what you were capable of, both of you. She planned for this. What do you mean? Margaret asked, speaking for the first time. I opened the journal to a marked page. This is grandmother's real will, her real intentions. Everything of value was placed in a trust before she died, with specific conditions. I looked directly at Sarah. She knew you'd try to take it all. She wanted to see what you'd do, how far you'd go. And now what? Michael demanded. You're going to take everything. Leave us with nothing. No, I replied. I'm going to do what grandmother would have wanted. The trust will remain intact, but with new conditions. I pulled out a document Mr. Chen had prepared. If you both sign this confession admitting to your fraud and manipulation, the trust will help pay off the debts you've incurred. Sarah's lawyer started to object, but she cut him off. And if we don't sign, then the bank proceeds with fraud charges and all the evidence of your deception goes public. Your choice. The silence in the room was deafening. Margaret was the first to speak. Sign it, she said to Michael, her voice tight with disappointment. Sign it and be grateful your grandmother's granddaughter has more mercy than either of you deserve. One by one they signed. Sarah's hand shook so badly she could barely write her name. Michael wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. When it was done, Mr. Chen collected the documents and nodded to me. There's one more thing, I said, standing. The engagement ring. Sarah's hand instinctively covered the diamond. But it belonged to grandmother. It was never yours to take. Slowly, reluctantly, she slipped it off and placed it on the table. I picked it up, feeling its familiar weight. Grandmother told me once that this ring wasn't just about value, I said, turning it in my hand. It was about legacy, about the kind of person you choose to be. She wore it for 50 years, building a life based on integrity and wisdom. You both could have learned from her example. Instead, you chose greed. I left them there. In that conference room, their worlds forever changed. The ride home was quiet, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the city. When I reached grandmother's house, my house now, I went straight to her study. Sitting in her favorite chair, I slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, just as she'd said it would. On her desk, next to the unfinished crossword puzzle, I found an envelope I hadn't noticed before. Inside was a short note in her familiar handwriting. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then everything has played out as I expected. Remember that true wealth isn't in what you own, but in who you choose to be. You've proven yourself worthy of not just my inheritance, but of my legacy. The ring is yours now. Wear it with pride, knowing that you faced adversity with grace and emerged stronger. And perhaps someday, when the time is right, you'll pass these lessons on to someone who needs them as much as you once did. With all my love, Grandmother Rose. I sat there until the sun set, thinking about choices and consequences, about the price of greed and the value of integrity. Sarah and Michael would recover eventually. The trust would ensure they didn't end up destitute. But they would never again have the power to hurt me. Months later, I heard they'd moved to another state. Their engagement quietly ended. Margaret sent me a Christmas card, thanking me for handling things with more grace than they deserved. Sarah never reached out again, and that was fine. Some bridges, once burned, are better left as ashes. The house became my sanctuary, filled with grandmother's books and memories. I started a foundation in her name, providing education grants to young women pursuing their dreams against the odds. Every time I sign a check for a new scholarship, I think about her wisdom, her foresight, her understanding of human nature. And the ring? I wear it every day, a reminder that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in taking what others have, but in becoming someone they can never diminish. Grandmother knew that all along. She just waited patiently for me to learn it too.